Ms. Wells,
Here.
Mr. Cantor,
Here.
Mr. Goldstein,
Unfortunately, for the final time, here.
Mr. Rowena,
Here.
and Mr. Schulman.
Here. Before we begin, I just wanted to recognize Josh and congratulate him on his election to the Common Council and thank him for his service from which we've all benefited. Your intelligence, your steady hand, your thoroughness have been important to us, and we really appreciate it. And we're sorry to be losing you.
Yeah, I am so, as I said this to Galen the other night, the one bittersweet part about this experience is that I have to unfortunately resign from the commission. I have so enjoyed serving on this incredible commission with all of you. But the good news is it's not like I'm going far. So we will still work together, and I hope to do it just sitting from a slightly different seat. But, I really want to thank you all. This has been such an incredible experience, and I love that we're all committed to doing our best for Norwalk.
Thank you. All right. We'll begin with the public hearing 2021-37R Oak Hills Park Authority text amendment to remove full service from the restaurant use for Oak Hills Golf Course. And who is, we have someone representing Oak Hills?
I'm here. Sorry, Don Mastronardi. I am
Okay.
the general manager.
Let me explain the process in case we have anyone here from the public. And that is that the applicant, in this case Oak Hills, will be given an opportunity to present their case regarding the change in language. Throughout that process, the zoning commissioners will have an opportunity to ask any questions they wish regarding the application. When that is completed, we will open it up to the public, who will then have an opportunity to comment on the application. Members of the public have a single opportunity to comment, so we don't put time limits on you, but if you're going to speak, make sure that in that one opportunity you have, you say everything that is important to you. Once all the members of the public who wish to speak have had an opportunity, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to those comments. And again, during that time, the commission members will have an opportunity to ask any further questions that they have. Once that process is completed, in all likelihood, unless there is some outstanding reason, we will close the public hearing. All right, and with that, Mr. Mastronardi, turn it over to you.
I'm sorry.
This is the point at which we ask you to make the case for your request.
Okay, so my understanding of the text amendment change, we were changing a word in the amendment that would allow us to build a sit-up bar, and the original requirements were a 15-foot bar, I believe, was the original amendment that was put in place some years ago. We built a standard bar that was about 19 feet by 6 feet, which is kind of like the corner that comes around the elbow. which allows us to put all the necessary requirements for like health. So you got your hand sinks and stuff like that, and refrigeration and stuff. So the 15-foot bar for our wouldn't have been feasible for us. So we had to extend the bar a little bit, and it allows us to give us a sit down bar with, I think, 14 chairs. And it allows us to now have a sit down bar for Oak Hills and the visitors that come in there to play golf for the restaurant, which we're hopefully opening in the next week or two, depending on how tonight goes. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has or concerns, hopefully answer any concerns. So I would just open up to anybody that has any concerns or questions. I'm here to answer.
I actually have a question for our own staff. And I ask it actually on behalf of anyone from the public who may be listening. And that is, what is the reason for the current language that limits the length of the bar?
So my understanding was the original definition of an full service restaurant was more implemented towards geared towards Washington Street, with the idea that they didn't want essentially just a bunch of bars open on Washington Street. They wanted a restaurant component to it. And then it just so happened, I think, when they added that text definition to the regulations, it applied to a few other zones, including essentially Oak Hills. So limiting their bar length to 15 feet.
Well, is there any threat that if we adopt this text change, that might then allow for just bars on Washington Street?
No, so this is specific to Oak Hills. So this is the use that we're modifying is pretty much just Oak Hills. We're not changing the definition of a full service restaurant, which will still apply to Washington Street as it has in the past.
Okay, thank you. Commission members, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Was it previously, or the way it is now, before the text amendment, people can only order drinks from the tables? They can't just come stand at the bar and order a drink? Is that correct?
The previous space had what was called a service bar. So it didn't have an actual sit down bar. You'd have to go up to the station and get like a beer or a glass of wine or something like that. So it's like it was a standard service station. So it was essentially just a wall with like a little counter that had,
For serving the tables, primarily.
correct. Yeah, you would order from the table or go walk up to the service station. Correct.
Yeah. Okay, and then this is a real bar, but there still will be a restaurant.
Oh yeah, no, it's a restaurant that has a bar. That it's not a bar, that it's a restaurant that has a bar. So yeah, no, it's a really nice sit down restaurant with a beautiful patio. Obviously, Oak Hills has. It just allows us to kind of be a little more multifunctional and allow us to kind of really take advantage of the wonderful people that come in there and that want to be able to come and enjoy the space.
Right, so people can do a round of golf, come have a beer before they go.
Lunch, dinner, breakfast.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions before we open it up to the public? Okay, if not, we'll open it up to the public. Brian, you want to explain how that's done?
Sure. So if anyone here from the public would like to speak regarding this application, you would hit star. No one's here on a phone, but if you were, you'd hit star 9. If you are here on Zoom, you would go down to the bottom and you'd hit the raise your hand button.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak?
So the raise your hand feature is right at the bottom of your screen under everybody's faces. I don't think so, Lou.
Okay. If not, Mr. Mastronati, if there's any final comments you want to make before we close the hearing?
Yeah, my final comment would just be like, I hope everybody in Norwalk gets to, and people that come visit outside of Norwalk, really like what we did. We transformed the space. We made it really look really welcoming and warm for not only for like wedding receptions and a sit down place to come eat, but we tried to make it, a one size fits all for everyone. So we really hope that Norwalk gets behind it and supports it. And we think, with our restaurant Dry Dock, we think we kind of modeling it, the food wise and that kind of stuff after that. And we really hope that people get behind it. And I think people are really going to enjoy what we do.
Thank you. Any final questions from the members of the commission? No? All right, if not, we'll close the public hearing and move on.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Now, moving on means action on this public hearing. Brian, can you put up the motion?
Sure. So what I'll do, I'll pull up the resolution that was
Okay.
drafted, and then I'll mention before we go to the Planning Commission decision and the CAM decision that Harbor was sent the modification or the text amendment because it does AAA zone technically does abut the Harbor. They had no comments and therefore it's an approval through them. And then the other agency that reviewed it was Westcog and they had no issues with it.
Okay.
either.
My understanding is that we need Galen to read in the Planning Commission recommendation and the deep
Right.
recommendation.
And here's the draft resolution.
Galen, do you have those recommendations in front of you?
Muted, Galen. You're muted.
That's not very helpful, is it?
Okay.
This is a memo from Marcy L. Gallant, Senior Coastal Planner. The date is September 27th, 2021. Subject is CT, DEP, LWRD, comments on zone change number 2021-37R. Amend to remove the text full service from restaurant use for Oak Hills Golf Course. Dear Commission members, thank you for forwarding the above referenced zone change referral to the Land and Water Resource Division, LWRD of Connecticut DEEP, which we received electronically on September 27th, 2021. Our office has reviewed the regulation change for consistency with the goals and policies of the Connecticut Coastal Management Act, CCMA, and find the proposal generally consistent. These comments are made in accordance with Connecticut General Statute Section 22A-104, which requires notification to this office at least 35 days prior to the commencement of the hearing thereon. Please contact me with any questions on this or any coastal management matter you may have. Sincerely, Mary L. Gallant. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Senior Coastal Planner, CT, DEP, Land and Water Resources Division, Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, 79 Elm Street, Hartford, Connecticut, 06106-5127. And then Marcy.bound@ct.gov. And her phone number, 860-424-3623.
And the next one from the Planning Commission?
Yes, this is to the Zoning Commission, Louis Schulman, Chairman, from Brian Baker, Principal Planner, Zoning Commission referral number 2021-37R-Oak Hills Park Authority 165 Philo Street, 1 Charles Marshall Drive text amendment to remove full service in quotes from the restaurant use for Oak Hills Golf Course. In their October 13th, 2021 meeting, the Planning Commission made the following decision, be it resolved by the Norwalk Planning Commission that the Zoning Commission referral number 2021-37R Oak Hills Park Authority 165 Philo Street /1 Charles Marshall Drive text amendment to remove quote full service end quote from the restaurant use for Oak Hills Golf Course in caps be approved. Be it further resolved that the reason for this action are to implement the plan of conservation development goals, actions, and strategies. Number 1, to achieve the plan of conservation development goal that, quote, Norwalk aims to have the best city park and recreation system in Connecticut, end quote, Chapter 7, enhancing open space, park, trail and recreation system, semicolon, and 2, to achieve the plan of conservation and development goal for Norwalk to, quote, focus on maintaining and improving the large parks that serve the city, such as Pasture Beach, Cranberry Park, and Oak Hills, end quote. Chapter 7, enhancing open space, park, trail, and recreation systems, period. Be it further resolved that notice of this action be forwarded to the Norwalk Zoning Commission.
Okay. Having read those into the record, can I have a motion to approve the draft resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Richard moves and Josh seconds. Any discussion? If there is no discussion, then let's proceed to a vote. Let's do a roll call on this.
Sure. Mr. Rowena,
Yes.
Mr. Witherspoon,
Yes.
Ms. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Mr. Goldstein,
Yes.
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes.
All right, it's unanimous.
Okay. By unanimous vote, we approve the text amendment. Let's move on to item B, 2021-16R/SP Workforce Partners LLC, 132 Flax Hill Road. Request to modify conditions of approval regarding shared amenity space.
Unfortunately, this is where I have to sort of hit my hard stop. Just wanted to say thank you guys and figure it's a clean break to do it now before they start the next application.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you guys.
you, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Bye.
See you soon.
All right.
Thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Attorney Blank is here representing Workforce Partners, LLC.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Adam Blank for Workforce Partners. Kevney Moses from Workforce Partners is also on. I'm sure you remember approving fairly recently the application at 132 Flax Hill, which was basically an interior fit up to make some of the units a little bit smaller, clean the building up and reconfigure the parking lot. In doing so, we needed a reduction of the 200-foot recreation space area down to 154 feet per unit, which was required, or which is permissible under your regulations. And you'd previously granted the same essential thing at One Elm Crest, where they did 155 square feet per unit. And that was also a workforce Partners project. In the deliberations, we showed you, and I'll show you again. We had showed you and discussed that it's shared ownership with the neighboring property at 138. And we had represented that we would be happy to let the residents over here use the amenity space at 138, which we remain fine with. When you guys discussed it and made it a condition, and we are sort of guilty. We are not saying it's on you, but that we weren't, I guess, clear enough and hadn't thought it through enough at the time that was going to create some issues for us with respect to if it was a permanent easement, which was what was put in as a condition. And actually, can you hear me?
Yeah, but I can't see your screen, Adam.
All right, I think now it unfroze. You see the
There you
screen
go.
now?
Yep.
Sorry about that. So in any event, what we are asking for is to leave the condition, but make it more temporary in nature, so that the new condition, instead of it being an easement recorded, that we maintain that space as long as Workforce Partners owns both properties. We would, of course, after that, still have the required 154 square feet per unit, or 154 square feet per unit of recreation area at 132. And we're happy to add, the only difference between the two is that this side doesn't have a grill. If you'd like us to add a grill over here, we're certainly willing to do that. That's my 2-minute version. I can always talk more if you'd like, but if you don't have concerns, I'll shut up. But if you want to hear more from me or Kevin, we're happy to explain it further.
Questions from the commission?
Yes. I have a major concern with it. I don't find this to be a minor change at all. The map and the presentation that was made, clearly indicated that these properties were jointly owned. And it seems to me that the access way and the parking are joined at the hip with these two properties. So I am really kind of at a loss as to why a permanent easement can't be maintained on this property and what possible effect it could have on a future sale. And if it does have an effect on a future sale, then, we should have talked about that at the initial hearing.
Yeah, and so I take your point. I will say that there was a requirement, and there is, right, it was shown. Hopefully this will load quicker this time. Yeah, so there is a shared entranceway, and it is a condition that there be a easement for that. The parking, though, is not actually shared, and so that's not a condition, but there certainly is for the traffic flow, and there will be essentially a reciprocal easement agreement that will be recorded for traffic. But the owner does have concerns about the maintenance and access to the recreation areas if they no longer own both, particularly because you previously approved this almost identical recreation area spaces and not had any issue with it.
So your concern here is that by having the recorded easement, you would be required to own both buildings and couldn't sell them separately. You could sell the two together, but you couldn't sell them separately. So that represents something, and I'm not talking in technical terms here when I say this, but something of a hardship or potential hardship to the owners if they want to dispose of one but not both of the buildings. And
But Mr. Chairman, if I could interrupt you, your underlying premise isn't correct. The property could certainly be sold subject to an easement. The question is going to be whether another buyer likes that or not.
Okay. I stand corrected.
Well, I think you're, good evening, commissioners. If I could just jump in briefly, and I think you're absolutely right, Commissioner Ruina, that a potential next buyer could or could not have an issue with that. But they certainly could. And I think for us, it's a little bit less about the sale as it is procedurally. And I think at the time of the hearing, I clearly had stated, yes, we would be open to this type of reciprocal easement, but, and I put this fault on myself. I didn't really have the time to think about it and understand the complexities of it and how it could affect these properties down the road. And I think most seminally, to me, it's somewhat unique where I think, as Mr. Schulman has stated, a hardship or an encumbrance has been placed on an adjoining property not connected with the application itself. So that piece, I guess, was hard for me to wrap my head around a little bit, in that's not necessarily procedural. It could have happened before. I just haven't seen it myself. I'm not saying it hasn't, but it's certainly unique. Again, and if these properties were under separate ownership at the point of our application, I don't think that type of hardship could have even come into, or this type of easement could have come into question, as in placing a hardship or a detriment to an adjacent property by way of the application of another. So procedurally, it's kind of been hard for me to wrap my head around. And then, the other part is that vehicular easements are very common. As you know, these types of shared drives occur all the time, but recreation easements don't occur very often. And for banks, lenders, and insurers of properties, that could potentially be a hurdle. Additionally, the hardship is the easement for 132 really becomes a hardship for 138, because let's just say we sell it. And again, we don't have an intention to anytime in the near future. We plan on holding this property, but when that time comes, that means the burden of this easement falls on the owner of 138. And I know it seems pie in the sky, but there are some realities to it as far as having to maintain that area, right? And also making sure that it's safe, well lit, there's no vagrancy or loitering or littering, and the maintenance and possible additional insurance cost associated with that easement, again, falls on the owners of 138.
And for all of the reasons that you've just stated, that's why we wanted this easement in place, to make sure that all of those things continued on this special permit application that you asked us for.
Steve, can I ask you a question? Are we allowed to consider these sorts of hardships or in reaching a decision ourselves?
Well, I think you have the ability to modify the conditions that were imposed on the initial application. So, you just have to weigh the request of the applicant and see if what they're requesting has merit to it, and then, modify it accordingly.
Or not.
Right.
And I think we understand, Mr. Arena, your position. I think before we even dealt with a hardship, and maybe you would feel, maybe it would have been different, but my feeling is that the outcome of the vote and the conditions, if we had said that we know the neighboring property owner and we've entered into a parking and access easement, that would have satisfied the easement part of it. And if we had come to you and said, we're only going to be able to provide 154 square feet of open area amenity space for our residents, that's within the regulations, it's permissible for you to grant that, and we have nothing to do with this other property, I suspect it would have been approved without any condition related to shared open space. It wasn't my sense that the fact that there was this extra open space that would get us basically back to 200, which doesn't give you any historic credit, that was the driving factor for the approval. And so even if there wasn't a hardship, my feeling was, it's a fairly minor change and it likely would have been approved anyway. So help us out. But if it's that important to you, or you feel like we've done you wrong, then it's not a minor change. You can say it's not a minor change, and we're stuck to the conditions that were approved.
I can't speak for anybody else. All I know is that a map was presented It has a very intricate parking plan. I think you'll agree that the 3 parallel parking spaces, for instance, on, I don't remember which one is 38 and 36, but the 3 parallel parking spaces, the middle space can't go anywhere unless it goes out on the other property. So these properties were basically joined. And it was your presentation that the parking areas were joined, were shared, the access was shared, and the recreational areas were shared. So I don't feel it's a minor change, but if the rest of the commission does, that's, you know, that's up to them. But I feel this was the presentation that was made, and this is what I voted for.
How hard would it be to get the recreation space back up on an equal side so it's no longer this shared commentary being the thing here?
Well, so I did just want to clarify 2 things, that in no way in our application in written format did that application purport that these recreation areas would be shared between the properties. That was by no means part of our application, and I take full onus and full apology for stating that very simply, that, you know, that they could share the space on 138 during our presentation. I should not have said that in general, but it was not what we were hanging our hat on for the application. I just want to be clear about that. And I also just want to raise the question, you know, and partially to answer your question also, Nick, it would, one, I'll answer your question, Nick. To get the actual square footage of the recreation area equal between the 2 sites would be an impossibility with the site plan as it's drawn. And I say that because, you know, as you know, one of the things we were seeking a historic credit for was the lot width. And you'll notice that the lot width on 132 is much narrower than 138. The parcel is smaller, and by the nature of just these existing buildings, they were non-conforming when they were conforming when they're built, not conforming necessarily to today's standards, but there's just not enough land area with both the vehicular ways that we need and the parking that's obviously required. And you know, we'd love to put more in, but frankly, there's just not room for it. However, as Adam had stated, one thing we can do is create parity between the amenities that are provided on the 2 properties. And 138 has a small patio back here that Adam's kind of hovering over there, and it's a simple patio that's got a picnic table and a charcoal grill. And you know, we've shown a picnic table on the plans for 132. We've shown a bike rack, and we would be happy to also implement a grill onto that property to then create equal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, but
Yeah.
I think Dick's point's even more so. The more the map's up, the more it sort of stares you in the face. 138 goes, puts up a wall there. You lose spots 4, 5, and 6 potentially.
No. There will be, and there's no backing off of, there will be an easement here that will allow for access in, and they need access out.
So there's no changing to the parking period.
No, and that's going to be locked in forever.
Locked in
the written
forever.
easement. Yeah. We're just talking about the green space. And I don't know from Steve, I just didn't look at it, but I don't think we can, but I don't know if we can count porch space as amenity space, which we haven't here.
I don't think so. I that was just going to clarify too.
Nice try.
I wanted to just make sure that everybody was understood that the easement for the vehicular access and the parking on the spaces on those blue spaces on the left will remain, but the only part of the easement that's proposed to go away is the future rec space condition. So the parking and vehicular access does not go away under any circumstance. And if we need to clarify the conditions to that we can do that easily.
One other thing I just want to throw out there as another just talking point is that there's only 5 units at 132 where there's 7 at 138. So where there might be less recreation area, there's also fewer tenants to be utilizing that recreation area than there would be at 138.
Well, my position on this is a little bit awkward. You may remember, I did not favor the historic credit because it was my feeling that the building, at least in my view, didn't meet the criteria, as I understand them, for historical significance. That being the case, I'd have to find myself insisting on the easement regarding the recreational space that you agreed to and that we voted on. I mean, unless you, Mr. Moses and Attorney Blankenship have more, I'll call for a vote on this.
Adam, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
All right, is there a motion to approve this change?
I'm sorry, Mr. Schulman, can I just ask 2 questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Do not mean to
That's
beat
okay.
this horse. I'm sorry. But I do have a question that if these properties had been under separate ownership, would it have been within the commission's purview to place this type of easement on another property not associated with the application in front of you?
No,
No, I don't see how we have any control over independently owned properties.
Well, and then I guess I would furthermore ask the question, let's take the ownership out. Would it be possible for the commission to place an easement on an adjacent property owner that is not part of the application in front of you? Or an adjacent property?
But that wasn't the application in this
Right.
instance.
yeah, it was approved, I thought, as one project.
Well,
It was like one project. It was 2 lots, but one project. That's at least what I thought I understood.
well, none of the credits that we sought were based on the totality of the 2 properties. And I think, Adam, please chime in if you believe that legally this is different. I believe everything that we submitted was purely in regards to our property, and it was the one comment I made about shared recreation area during the presentation.
Galen, I believe I agree with Mr. Moses. But it was the recommendation of the applicant that on the issue of the recreational space, they were willing for us to approve this easement. And I think that's the reason we are where we are. Had they not agreed to it, then we would have voted on the application without that, and it would have passed or it would have failed.
I guess, thank you for that, Galen and Mr. Schulman. Two other quick questions here. And this is purely for my own edification, I guess, as far as, our next application, our next project. I like knowing what I'm walking into. what was so seminally different between the Elmcrest project approved with 155 square feet of recreation area versus this project at 154 square feet?
I'm not sure that, I mean, I don't speak for the commission, but speaking for myself, I'm not sure I can answer that. I don't recall the details of one Elmcrest, frankly, well enough to answer it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's relevant.
Well, I think it is somewhat relevant. I mean, the recreation areas are off by 1 square foot, and the commission approved that where there was 3 times as many units. And at 132, there's only 5 units and the same amount of recreation area. And as an applicant and a member of the community in Norwalk, I'm also wondering what is different? What can I expect in the next application, I guess?
Wasn't the minimum rec area between the two properties, it was needed to be shared in order to meet the minimum needed, correct?
Sorry, Brian, one more time.
So wasn't the rec area that's why the reason why it was needed to be shared was to meet the minimum requirements?
No, we had 154 square feet on 132 alone, which with the historic 25% reduction, you know, you're required to have 150. We were at 154. So just over that threshold, just like at Elmcrest when we were at 155. And then I guess the last question I would have is if, you know, once again, if the recreation amenities between the two sites are equal aside from area, you know, this residents can enjoy the same things. How I guess, why might the easement be necessary is all. So I'll leave it at that, but I appreciate y'all's time and for hearing us this evening.
Galen, I don't know if you've frozen or if you wanted to say something.
No, I was just changing the view.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, sorry. So I go back to the my original question. Is there a motion to approve this change as requested by the developer?
I'd make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second? Then the motion fails for lack of a second. Am I correct? Steve?
Yeah, and unless someone has an alternate motion, but yeah, it needs a second to carry.
All right. Shall we move on? Next item on the agenda, 2021-20 R/M, zoning commission, building zone regulation, text amendment and building zone map amendments to create the East Norwalk Village TOD zone EVTZ. Continued review. Steve, we've seen that you've made some additional minor changes.
Correct. I figured it would be a good idea just to go through those one more time. I think we kind of ironed out a lot of the last bit of kinks that were there. I'll go through what the changes were. I pulled up the design guidelines. Is that text large enough for everybody to read through?
I'd prefer if you could make it just a little bit larger. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So this was the first change. And so the changes were just in the red bold type. There's some crossouts too, but this is actually a Brian Baker recommendation to add in there about, as we've been talking about, it's come up with a couple of applications in terms of having maintenance plans, not only for when you have things like landscaping, but also building facades. If the exterior starts to crack or chip, that you want those fixed in a timely fashion so they don't deteriorate. So that's just a kind of a small add-on. here was just try to take some language that we use in other parts of the historic preservation section of the regulations in terms of probably similar to what we use with the Black's Hill request, where we pull that language out so that way it's more consistent throughout the regulation, doesn't add any additional burden or add any additional specific change to the overall document itself. And please stop me if you have questions or comments at any point. Next change was, and part of this is kind of just kind of common sense. Some of this came from discussions with Bob Griswatz, where basically he says, well, if part of the area in East Avenue is a good example of this, if the existing East Avenue area is not what you want it to look like in the future, then don't indicate in your text that you want it to be consistent with the way it looks like at the present. So that's kind of clarifying language as in 311. And 315 is more just cleanup, nothing really significant in that. A similar 321, and more just cleanup. Under 2, I can't recall if this crossout was a new crossout or an old crossout, but I'm going to go off the premise that it's a new crossout. I think that's just basically saying your design shall be consistent with the zoning standards that are in place. There's not, let's see. And C is just clarifying language, making sure that there's, while, we don't want every building to be the same, we do want a little bit of continuation of the theme throughout the area, so it kind of ties itself together. That's just a little clarifying language there. And there was no text about signs in the design manual, so I added 7 in there. So just kind of, and if anybody has any questions or wants to edit that language, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy.
Well, just a question, Steve, does that override other language on sign requirements in terms of size, for example?
No, so so this document itself kind of is like a compendium to the zoning regulations. So this gets into specifics about aesthetic, where the zoning regulations really get into specifics about size and like location and dimensional standards versus this is kind of more strictly aesthetic.
Well, then let's go back. Let's go back to that. Is it worth a second sentence simply mentioning that all signs must be in compliance with the appropriate zoning signage requirements?
Yeah, we can add that.
How is that monitored over time, Steve? So there's obviously like the initial, and then is that through like code enforcement or something like that?
Well, anytime, so assuming these regulations, what these pass, so any sign that comes in after the adoption of these regulations has to conform to the new standards. So any sign comes in has to get a permit, meet the dimensional standards, and then we inspect it once it's up to make sure it's they erected what they got approved for. If they don't, then we would make them correct that, or if they just went ahead and put up a sign without a permit,
Okay.
we would go after them for that as well. Okay, sorry, I'm just writing myself a note. Okay, this one just clarifying So we had only the store, so we
Hmm.
changed it to business because store's a little more specific to a type of use where business could be any myriad of kind of commercial uses. I apologize for the scroll. I know it's not the easiest. And if there's any other questions on any other parts of this that aren't red bold, please also jump in and let me know. One change from prior revisions, we've been meeting between planning and zoning, TMP, and Public Works about streetscape in the area. So what's proposed prior, we had like a 5-foot sidewalk with a 2-foot snow shelf. Now we've got it up to 8. They really would like to get it up to 10 in total, but that's going to be a little trickier. So we think there's room for 5 and 3. So that's kind of how that'll handle. So the 3-foot amenity zone will be a landscaped area. It could serve as a bioswale, could have trees within that, but it's just a nicer area which provides some separation between pedestrian and the vehicular travel way.
That's something
And
they're
then-
looking to do across the whole city? Or at least in
Yeah, and
the,
actually even
downtown
wider
areas.
in other areas too.
and what is it today?
It depends what area of the city you're in. So right now in the downtown, it was 7, but we're trying to bump that up and up to at least 10.
Oh, that's great. That's so nice for pedestrians.
Yeah,
I imagine
that's,
that- Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying in East Norwalk now, what is it? Is it more like 5?
It's 5. In some areas, it's lower and it depends on the sidewalk.
Gotcha. Oh, that's exciting for the walkers.
And under B, that language is kind of
Mhm.
unnecessary since A is kind of, A handles that with the amenity zone. All right, and I'll go through and please, like I said, stop me if there's anything that you have questions on. The one addition I know that's coming up is I added some,
You just went past some red there.
right, that red's gonna stay regardless, just to kind of, there were a couple points in here where we had pictures of certain things we wanted to highlight, but
Mhm.
then we understood that there were, like, that sidewalk, for example, doesn't meet what we want for the sidewalk, so that's just a
Right.
notation to say, don't look at the sidewalk.
Okay.
Focus on the other aspects of the picture.
So with this picture, I was just curious, what's the thing that you like in this photo?
I think with this one, it's the kind of the theme of the buildings in terms of how it, they're relate to the street, and then the type of architecture that could work in like kind of a nautical village environment. And if you don't like the picture, we can search for others too, so. Same thing with the red notation there is more just, it will stay post approval as well. And this text though, I think is new because yes, correct. This shows the signage. So if there is anything you'd like added, deleted, have questions on in terms of the text supporting figures 15 and 16, I'm happy to make edits. And if you find something even after tonight, we can change it at the public hearing will be December 12th. We can change it that night too. That really doesn't alter any kind of specifics of the plan itself. It's just kind of clarifying language. Okay, I don't think there's really many other changes through this section. No, I think that's it. Any other questions on that? No,
What was
otherwise,
this last page to try to highlight?
this is a bus shelter for, we kind of said if they put any new bus shelters in, this is the way we want the bus shelters.
Gotcha. Okay.
Similar with the zoning text, bold red is new language. Blow it up a little bit. Or that, and this, a lot of this came from discussions with Bob Griswold, so that's kind of just clarifying language. And you had asked, I think actually Mr. Cantor asked at our last discussion on this about the Rite Aid building just off exit 16. That building, it's 11,000 square feet. So I'm gonna guess you might want to lower this number here. I'm happy to drop that down to whatever you think is appropriate.
What do others think?
Is that Rite Aid? I mean, I know there's only one retail floor, but is that a two-story building?
No, I think it's just one.
Okay.
Should we lower it to what, about 15,000?
Well, the question is like, do you want to encourage the sort of bigger box sort of shops from moving in that way? Right? Isn't that the notion there, Steve?
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, you could always allow that by, you could always add that back in under special permit too. So you could leave this, you could drop number 12 down to whatever.
Like 10,000.
Yeah, or whatever you felt was appropriate. And then when you had something higher, you could say by special permit.
Steve, can you go to the language above that? Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Do you want me to go higher?
Just a little bit. Just, okay.
I think we align it with 4. Unless it's the only place we're putting a percentage or a number.
All right, now can you scroll back down to the red? Okay, I see.
And Brian, Brian or Michelle, you don't recall what the neighborhood business is now, do you? I can't remember if it's 10 for the site plan. I would look the other day and I can't remember.
Let's see.
I think it's 11 or less.
I'm not sure why 11, but
I think because that's what I think Winfield was.
Let's put some numbers on a dartboard.
yeah, basically.
It's 8,000.
It's
8,000.
8,000.
Yeah.
That sounds like, I mean, in the sense of unifying things across the board, unless there's a reason not to, and then we can put above as a special permit. That'd be my bid. I don't know what others' view there would be. Like, how big is like Wall Street, like the theaters that you'd want? Like 8,000 seems right, but I feel like I'm guessing.
I guess bigger by special permit would be probably the way to go.
Okay, so you want to drop that to site plan at 8,000 or less. And then anything above that special permit.
Did Bob have a view on that at all?
Nothing really substantial. He did kind of like, didn't really move the meter
Gotcha.
one way or the other.
What is your staff's view on that? Like, do you see a benefit of going one way or the other?
I think it might have been the one who told Steve to do 25,000. And I think the reason why was I didn't want, if you had a restaurant coming in, that's just like it's their first restaurant that they're opening up based on their square footage to have to go through a special permit process. But then I think now that we're looking at it, 25 seems too high. That was my thought behind it, is to try to take away some of the red tape from like a.
Well, restaurants 11 is not controlled by anything, correct?
Right. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I mean, to me, 10 seems like a good number. I don't know the difference between 8 and 10 in terms of, like if there's a, like a store brand out there that's, looks at, and their model is 8,000 versus 10,000, what they need for their space. To me, try to be as business friendly as possible with these kind of things if you're trying to get a tenant in there, but I don't know what the magic number is in terms of I think the the Rite Aid at least gives you a benchmark, and that's about 11,000. So
The big space.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it seems to me that the special permit process as opposed to site plan review is not so terribly burdensome. It is a little more work to be sure, but there's no reason we couldn't move with the exception of the public hearing, we couldn't move the approval forward quickly. So I don't have a problem. I certainly don't have a problem going lower than 25. And yeah, I would think that 10 to 12 might be closer to a number to work with. I mean, a 10,000 square foot restaurant is really quite large. I mean, I'm wondering if not that we necessarily want one, but if that might be as large as, some of the themed restaurants that you see in all.
Lou, the way this is written,
Pardon me?
the way this is written right now, any restaurant of any size is permissible via site plan because 11 is unrestricted. I don't know if you're making a case for also putting square footage
Oh, I see.
constraints
I
there.
see.
12 is just pertains to retail stores
Right.
and personal and business service establishments, which I don't actually fully understand what is a personal and business service establishment, but I was just taking it general retail.
Yeah.
Do we define personal and business service establishment somewhere?
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't think I have a strong opinion one way or the other on if that's the direction you want to go, that's fine. I have no big objection. If you want to put it at 8 or 10, 10 seems like like I said, I like the round numbers. Seems based on something, and then if you want to go to that, that's fine.
Seems like a fair start. I don't know what do others agree there?
Sure.
10,000?
10,000.
I mean, they're all arbitrary.
Right.
Whether it's 8 or 10 or 12. Right, if nobody objects to the 10, let's make it 10.
And you have time, like I said, by the time you vote on it, if you come to, we can think of something else triggers why 8's a better number than 10, we'll let you know. I mean, if somebody comes up with some good reason, I think you'd always switch that, and it doesn't alter the big picture is not changing at all by 8 to
Right.
or 10,000.
Great, and we'll add the 25 by special permit or whatever number.
Yeah, well, so the language down by special permit it'll probably fit, somewhere under probably be the new number 9, and it'll say retail establishments greater than 10,000 square feet.
Right.
And I saw the removal of the gas stations. I thought that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that was one Brian caught because it just kind of goes kind of anti-TOD.
Right.
Yeah, and there's 4 of them already on that
Yeah.
strip. So
Right.
personal in case others are curious, personal service is providing services involving the care of a person or his or her apparel, barbershop, beauty parlor, shoe repair, dressmaking, health club, spa.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a catch-all for a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Well, that makes sense. That's what I would have thought it was.
You're better than I am, Galen. I was at a loss of what that could be.
So here's the sidewalk language again, should be pretty much the same as where it was in the design guidelines. And this does come back into play later on. I added some language about that as well into the amenities. And so here's a change here. The one regarding the shared shaded public seating, excuse me. Bob recommended adding the language in red, so I included that. I added the wider sidewalks below as an amenity because if you think about some of the, especially on the smaller lots, the narrower lots, and they're not very deep, it'd be great if we could get the 10-foot sidewalk, but it's also taking away some of their lot area for development purposes. It's going to be tight to fit in buildings plus parking. So that's why I said if they brought those sidewalks up to 10 feet, then they can use that as some points towards amenities.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And this, we may have gone over this last time, I can't recall, but there was some concern. Bob had raised some questions about, just be careful with some of the lead categories because potentially somebody could double dip. If we already require, for example, bike racks on site, they can get points for putting bike racks in towards lead as well as getting points towards their amenities. So we wanted to make sure that the language, and I did go through the lead standards and there's a lot of categories there. And again, lead's not the only program someone could follow, but there are a lot of categories in there. So it's really hard to come up with a list of eligible categories. I think that would be something we'd need to parse out and have them explain to us what they are. And then we'd have to take a very, detailed look at what they're proposing to make sure it is consistent with what we're thinking for the area and what should be eligible for those points.
Okay.
And if anybody wants that language tightened up, I'm happy to we can look at that and edit it some more. Okay. Change here. I changed the rain garden points from 2 to 3 because this one talks about having a public art component. So it's like, well, a rain garden's 2 points. If you're actually doing something in addition, you should get an extra point. So that's really the reasoning behind that. Okay. So here's where we had, up until the last version, had a little bit of still some open questions about what the best methodology to use going forward, because we talked about, well, potentially you could, under certain types of solar technologies, and maybe those improve over time, that you could base it off a percent of the building that was being powered by the solar. But I think the best way, at least for now, to deal with that is based on the roof area of the building, because there are some questions that come up when you have commercial or mixed use buildings where the landlord may only, so the landlord technically, if they, were maybe a little sneaky, they could potentially just power the common spaces through the landlord meters, and the solar could just be used for those, where the bulk of the building might not be powered by solar at all. So that's why I think having the rooftop area based on percentage of it with the solar makes more sense at this point in time. I did speak with someone that does a lot of work in the solar area, and the state is looking at allowing solar to be, you could sell the solar back into the grid, where sometimes now that's not allowed. But I don't know if that's the same thing with the taxing district over there. I haven't got an answer to that question yet. So I'll try to get that before we have the public hearing on that. So that could be something in the future where you could actually get more rooftop solar based on the ability to put power back into the grid, right? Where right now you might be restricted from doing that. And similarly with the geothermal, we settled in on the area proposed versus trying to look at the percent of the building being powered by the geothermal. Any questions? Okay. And then I just cleaned up the language, just reading through it again. I figured must be is more stern than are considered. Just thought this was just better language. If anybody has any issues with that. And then I have this, the parking I had initially at 10, but similar to the concern about the narrowness and the depth of the lots, I think 5 feet, provided that that area between the residential and the parking is landscaped or fenced or however it's laid out, is probably more appropriate. And I think the building already has to be set back a certain distance from the residential zone. So I think that 5 feet is something that's doable in these circumstances. And the last section, I did send the sign section to Bob because he had not seen that before. I'm just going to scroll down quick. The two in yellow are two questions that he had that I couldn't really give some good thought to. So I figured we could discuss those and we could finalize the language before it goes out to referral. He had a question about, well, what if you have more, because right now it's the language was a maximum of 2 square feet for businesses not on the ground floor. But he said, well, what if you have multiple businesses on upper floors? Would you want to give each one of them 2 square feet? So I just figured I would ask you guys what you felt about that.
I think that's reasonable. I don't think even with 3 or 4 businesses that would be too crowded.
And we sort of need signs.
Okay, I'm happy to take that off. Okay, and the next one was just more of a question that he had about if you had somebody that had a couple different kind of or a building with a couple different kinds of sign patterns, would you want to look at total square foot per business or leave the regulation as it currently sits?
Steve, in my experience in working with landlords on commercial leases, they usually like to have a signboard, so to speak, that kind of goes with the character of the business, a building. And then the signboard is sort of allocated between the tenants, usually based on the square footage that they're renting. I'm a fan of signboards, and I'm also a big fan of numbers on buildings. I hate it when I'm trying to find something and you can go 5, 6, 7, 8, or 10 buildings with no numbers on. So if I had anything to say about the identification regulation, it would be a uniform signboard, but a big number designation someplace.
Yeah, I think the fire marshal requires the numbers on the buildings. I think that's required now. I think they have to do that.
Is it retro? Is it retro to all the buildings now?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer that I can ask. I don't know. I know a lot of places, though, they have gone back and made people put numbers on, because it's the same thing with the EMS. If they can't find the building, they can't be searching around in the dark with the lights on the side of the building looking for find the right spot. So anybody have any thoughts on the total square foot per business, or leave as is? And again, we could always tweak this before you ultimately vote in December.
Doesn't the size of the sign relate to the size of the building now?
Yeah, so a lot of times our signage per like a business relates to the the width of their storefront. That's kind of a common way to do that. So if you have like a 50-foot storefront, you get a certain size, a smaller one, you get a smaller sign. So
you're talking, this regulation is talking to individual storefronts as opposed to a building in general.
correct.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I can see if this still. Scroll up to the signs just to give you another refresh. So here's kind of a little more consistent with some of the theme that I think would fit in a little better in this area versus what you see in a lot of other spots. I don't know if that's visible. So these are the kind of like hanging signs that I really like these, and just my 2 cents. And then another example is down below where you have a wall sign, but they're lit from above, or they can be lit from below with kind of a sconce or something like that versus having a light box or something like that, which is, I don't think is as attractive. So then the dimensions would match up to kind of like these different kinds of signs you could have there. I mean, if we're not sure, I'd say we can revisit it at the last, if you have any, but if nobody has a strong feeling on it now, I can take the yellow text out for now, and then we can, again, that's a small change. It doesn't alter your ability to vote on that matter when it comes to the final vote.
Right.
And the only other thing, and it's not a change that's in the text at all, that I was kind of thinking about a little bit. Let me see if I can pull this up. Maybe you can see it on the map. You guys can see the map, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So some of these parcels, and I think what you'll hear again when we have the final public hearing is you're going to hear about all this new development and all these changes. And there are going to be a couple projects that come in probably right on the coattails of this getting approved. It's not going to be wholesale changes for a while. I mean, a lot of these properties are, they're all fractured ownership. A lot of them, a lot of these are small parcels, and it's going to be, some of these, it may be tough to redevelop to their full potential under the new regulations. Obviously, some of the larger sites, it'll be easier to redevelop them because, parking is a significant constraint on any development. One thing I was thinking about, and I think we had talked about this a while ago, was it, and it might make sense to revisit it down the road. I don't know if we have to do it right now, is for smaller parcels, if you have like, maybe something's under a quarter acre, or maybe it's a lower number or a little higher number, that the number of amenity points gets lowered. So you have a different formula for some smaller lots versus amenity points for the larger lots. Just wanted to throw that out there for discussion, and that's something we can always revisit down the road if things look like they're stagnating or they're not really kind of the district's not developing the way we would like it to, or we think it should. It's just something to throw out there for discussion.
Yeah. Do we want to encourage the separate development of the tiny lots?
No, so, and I think I'd have to pull these up through the tax cards, but my guess is some of these are not even a quarter of an acre. Some of them probably are, or even less than that. So I think the idea is, and maybe to your point, I think it's good if some of these got combined. I think it'll lead to better developments over time, but I don't, and some of these through here in particular, they're really not bad buildings. And if they never changed over time and they stayed the same, it wouldn't be the worst thing.
Mhm.
That's definitely not the case through the majority of the district, but there are some spots, particularly up through here, which really aren't, it's not a bad looking streetscape versus on the other side, which I think is completely different. I just wanted to throw that out there for just something to think about versus any kind of wholesale change at this point. I didn't have anything specific beyond that. So if you have any other items related to that you'd like to discuss, I'm happy to do so. Otherwise, we have to do the formal referrals, which will go out tomorrow, and then we can schedule the hearing for December 12th, and then hopefully act on it that night and, move forward.
Steve, December 12th is a Sunday.
Would I have the wrong date?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It's your second December meeting. Or your only December, actually. I think you're.
That's the 15th.
15th, I'm sorry. So the 15th.
And I hope we're not going to have anything else on the agenda. Because my guess is there are going to be a lot of people who want to speak. And we're going to have to let everyone speak. We're not going to say the people that spoke the last time we held a public hearing can't speak again.
Yeah, our thinking was, and it's good segue, and I know we're jumping a little bit ahead. Brian and I were chatting about the Richards Avenue application, how it might be better to put that on a separate meeting. I know
Right.
you don't have one scheduled before that in December, but it might make sense to hold a special meeting just for that application, because I imagine there'll be significant public comment for that one as well. So that might be something we'll probably know in another week or so, based as like the peer review from the traffic gets digested a little bit, and if we can move that forward, but we can send out a follow-up email about that.
Okay. And okay, and we do have another meeting Wednesday, the 17th. Oh, no. Sorry about that.
Good meeting that night.
If we have a special meeting, when would you propose that?
I think it would be either the 1st, 2nd, 8th, or 9th, somewhere around that.
Oh, okay, so before this hearing.
Yeah, because you can't go after, because then you're running into, not sure when Hanukkah is this year, and then Christmas.
And well, Brian and I when I'm back in the office, we'll take another look at that application. And I know that initially they wanted to go for your next meeting, but I didn't think that the TMP comments were going to be fully investigated at that point. I'm not sure if they've gotten, there were a couple of significant SEAC sign-offs that we were still.
Yeah, Liz had emailed me today saying that we should push it off from the next meeting.
Okay, so yeah, we'll get back to you early next week to look at an alternate date for that hearing, because I think that one could have a lot of people that come out to speak, so it's probably better not to mix that with East Norwalk. It's just
I
too much
agree.
for one night.
Okay. All right, let's move on the agenda. The next item is review and action on a new application 2021-38R Economic and Community Development. A text amendment to add outdoor dining as an allowed accessory use to all business zones. Report and recommended action. Steve, is that you or Brian?
That's me.
Okay, Brian.
So I believe it's the Ordinance Committee of Common Councils putting together or revising the existing outdoor dining ordinance for the city, and how they currently have it drafted would not align with the zoning regulations, because how they have it written is all restaurants would be able to have outdoor dining. And currently the zoning regulations only permit outdoor dining technically in a few zones. So what we're doing is proposing to essentially allow outdoor dining in all of the business zones so that all restaurants could have outdoor dining and align with the ordinance.
How does that align, for example, with the required sidewalk width?
So what they're proposing in the ordinance is that you need to maintain 4 feet of unobstructed sidewalk, which is the minimum for ADA.
Right.
So we what we do is we just reference you back to that ordinance and make sure that you maintain that.
Okay. And what action is it you're looking for us to take today?
So this is just really your preliminary look at it. We have to
Okay.
refer it out to all the agencies and then bring it back to you guys for a public hearing.
Brian, are there any restaurants that you're aware of that are not in the business zone?
The only ones that I can think of, there is the deli up on Newtown Ave. I think they're technically in a residential zone. I could double check. And that's the only one that comes to mind. I'd have to go back through and see if there's any that are, non-conforming like that.
Is Gregory's Shopping Center, is that what do they call Cranberry Center? Is that
I believe they're neighborhood business, so I think they fall into this. But I'll go through and see and
Okay.
make sure.
We'll wait for further information from you.
Okay.
Okay. Approval of minutes, October 20th. Can I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, Richard moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Michael seconds. I think we can do a show of hands. All in favor? Everyone's in favor, so there are no opposed, no abstentions. Comments of director, Steve?
Just, I figured I'd update you on the studies. I'm trying to think if there's anything significant to go over. The waterfront meeting, I think that's November 16th, the waterfront industrial zone waterfront meeting. I think that's when that's on the calendar for.
16th.
Yeah, that'll be kind of the
16th. Yeah.
first meeting of that group. We have I don't know, I think I sent it out to everybody. We sent out the link to the kind of the online map where you can kind of put little markers on and
Yes.
put notes in about different things. So we've been getting some good responses with that. And we're actually through one of our contacts sending out, trying to get some involvement with the school system on that. We figure that will be, might be a good exercise for some of the younger people to participate in the planning process, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while. So we'll work on that over the next few weeks. And that exercise will close out and then help kind of formulate ideas and concepts going forward on that.
Okay, on the waterfront, it's myself, Galen, and Richard who will be participating for the zoning commission. Do we have people from the planning commission on that as well?
Yes, we have still, I'm trying to remember who that is, but yes, we still the same Tammy Langalis, yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so Tammy will continue, and then we're adding a couple folks from Harbor Management and Shellfish.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, there is one item I wanted to bring up since Nick sent out his article that appeared in the Hour, and that has to do with the rental prices. That article that claimed there was a 55% increase in rental prices, which I suspect is very misleading. I asked Brian to do a little bit of research, and maybe Brian, you can report on that.
Yeah, so what I did was, the first things that jumped out to me in the article that I thought were a little strange were they mentioned that the rental price for a 1-bedroom unit is now $2,900 a month. And then in the next paragraph, they go on to say, well, and the median or the average price of a 2-bedroom is $2,800 a month. So, saying that a 2-bedroom is less expensive than a 1, I think is off. And then what I had done was gone through similar websites like apartments.com. There was Point to Homes, Apartment Finder, Rent Cafe, Zumper, and they all have different median or average rents for Norwalk based on this or what they have on as listed. And each of them range anywhere between $1,900 to $2,500. So that's about what they list as their average price. Not saying that that's inexpensive, but that's what they list as their average prices. So then I had spoken with Jess because she was the one who was interviewed in the article, and she was kind of going over some of the things that she thought. And most of it was related to the housing stock moving more from the older apartment buildings to the newer apartment buildings that are coming online. So those offer more amenities or are closer to the train station, so their average prices are a little bit higher. And then just the pressures on the housing stock right now. So you have people downsizing, moving out of homes because they're worth so much right now and moving into apartments. Or you have people moving out of New York City and moving here because the rents here are cheaper than New York City and they can work from home. So there's a lot of, pressure from both sides on apartments right now.
Right. But it really doesn't address the lower price apartments like the ones that Workforce Partners are offering. I'm certain that they're not increasing their prices 55%. And I just didn't want the members of the commission believing that things were so out of control.
Oh,
And
that's helpful.
yeah,
I appreciate that. I mean, I think it is though still a testament to the notion of the housing shortage and the home shortage writ large.
Right.
Right.
Laura, our senior planner in our office, is putting together a housing report, and she actually was looking at vacancy rates. And she found that our vacancy rate from 2010 to 2020 actually went down despite all the new, rentals that we've put on. So,
So that means more, they're just being eaten up. Like there's not,
right.
like they're
Right.
there's not houses or apartments are not sitting on the market.
right.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a high
it's a-
demand.
And,
Yeah, it's an
and-
interesting
And frankly, no matter how much we build in Norwalk, we can't solve this problem because this is a problem. This is at minimum a county-wide problem.
Oh, absolutely.
We can't be the solution for the entire county. So this is not something that's going to be easily solved or go away quickly.
No, not at all.
I'll pull something up just to kind of show you. And I did not participate in any of Mr. Baker's fine work, so I'm just jumping in late. So here's I just pulled up Waypoint, for example,
Mhm.
and here's the listings that they have. This is in the Waypoint itself. So
Not cheap.
no, not at
That's sort of
all.
aligned with the other one,
Right.
with the article in some ways.
Yeah, the other thing I find amazing is how small these are, given the high rentals.
You can
Ryan,
get
was
it.
there any information that you got during your conversations with people as to the number of the affordable units that have been rented?
As far as I know, pretty much all affordable units are 100% rented. As soon as they come on, just because there's such a backlog of it, essentially once they're available, they're rented.
I have suggested to our consultants redoing the zoning, and it's something I think we all ought to be thinking about. Right now, folks who are building apartments may have to put some money toward a fund that could be used for affordable or even low-income housing. I am recommending that we adopt a regulation that has anybody who's doing substantial construction, say something over $1 million of any kind, be required to put money toward construction of again, affordable or low or moderate income housing. Because everybody's affected by this problem, not just the folks who are putting up housing, but if you're putting up a retail business or even an office, you're part of what's going on in the community, and you ought to be assisting in the solution to this problem. I don't think it's fair that the burden falls only on people who are putting up housing.
Well, I think more importantly, anybody who has another kind of business the people who work there have to have a place to live.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, they use affordable housing or workforce housing.
Right. So that's it for me. Is there anything from anyone else?
I just wanted to make a kind of a generic comment, Steve, on the maps that I've taken a look at for the zone changes. You know, I recognize how difficult it is in Norwalk, especially with the millions of text change amendments that there've been in the 50 years that I've been practicing law in Norwalk. But I just wondered to myself, there's going to be a lot of properties that are going to be rendered non-conforming, and you know, there's really nothing to be done about that with a major zoning overhaul. But I'm wondering if perhaps the boundaries of the zones could relate more to streets or areas and not leave any little pockets with, you know, let's say a contractor yard in the middle of a residential area or a residence in the middle of an industrial zone or something. But I'm not really asking for a response. I'm just
Good.
throwing it out there.
Thank you. I have to think about that one. Yeah, we don't want to do that.
You know, just in
Yeah.
looking at the map, you know, you can see a little bump here and there. That's, you know, something that it doesn't look like it belongs in what you're trying to accomplish, but you know, I know it's hard. I had
Yeah,
a
and I
conversation with a
think
friend
we
of
can
mine
look at
one
that.
time, telling me
Sure.
about how wonderful her part of the country was because all the roads were straight and wide. And yeah, that's easy. They're only 10 years old.
Yeah, I think we have to, you know, that the fine nitty gritty of some of those streets should get looked at more closely before we vote on that, for sure.
Okay. Anything else to come before us? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, Richard moves, Galen seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. We are adjourned. Steve,
Hey, good.
enjoy the rest of
Night
your
all.
time down south.